People don't want to work right now. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I'm going to talk about the circumstances that we have today in the economy. It's not just going on in the United States. We're seeing it in Canada. We're seeing it in Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Everywhere is basically the same right now. And why? It's because they devalued your currency. You probably heard me say that before. Yeah. Well, I'm going to show you the data today and what I would like to call the breakdown of nations. That's what's going on here, and we see this perfect example going on in Canada. I'm going to break that down for you right here. You got to understand that every country is always going to have good points and bad points. There's going to be weak spots, there's going to be strong ones. You got to look at, if I say gas prices, for instance, very different if you're in California or if you're in Texas, or if we're looking at, the jobs numbers. This is very localized. But when we start to understand in depth what's really going on, for some people, it's pretty eye-opening. Let me show you some information first. We're going to start off with this. 38% of Americans have never felt more uninspired at work than they do now. That's not good. Adding work-based fitness options could fix the productivity slump and potentially improve revenue for companies. That's right. What you need is a yoga class in the middle of the workday in order to get people working again. Yes, I'm sure that will fix it. What we need, number one, is for stuff, not for people to get paid more. We need more pay. Listen, the stuff that we have, our basic essentials, housing, whether that's rent or mortgage, our food, and our energy is way too expensive. That's it. That's all. Yeah, you compare that to our salaries. No, it doesn't keep up. But what happens here is everything goes up. But our wages will not keep up with the prices of everything. And that is the issue. You see? We need to have a period in which these assets, like, our real estate, doesn't go up at such a ridiculous rate. And guess what? When the Federal Reserve is actually buying mortgage-backed securities, which in an indirect way is supporting the real estate market, that is complete absurdity. They are recently here engaging in quantitative tightening, right? We heard about that. Well, they're going to slow down their progress on that. So they're going to slow it down and try to do a nice little soft landing. Think of like an airplane. Okay, we were doing 80 billion on the treasuries. Now we're doing 25. Well, what happens here is that they're still doing mortgage-backed securities, haven't touched it. They haven't touched the amount. So the treasuries, I believe, was at 60 for the treasuries itself. But understand something. They are going hard on that for mortgage-backed securities, and they're not stopping. Crazy. Workers are secretly using AI on important tasks over fears that it will make them look replaceable. They are replaceable. Okay, that's what's going to happen. These companies are actively right now, whether you like it or not, whether it doesn't matter. There are right now conference calls in the boardrooms. They are asking the question, how do we increase productivity? You hear that stuff? You probably do. Whether or not you're in those meetings or you're just hearing about it on CNBC or whatever. Do you understand what that means? It is actually trying to get rid of people. That's what it is. A warning from the breakdown nations. And I would call it the breakdown of nations, okay? The fate of former model economies carry lessons for current stars. Oh, look, we have the Toronto skyline. That's right. Canada's GDP, their gross domestic product, has been shrinking at the worst rate for any developed country in the top 50. 50. Understand this. This is a country that per capita pumped in more cash than the United States did, vastly outnumbering any other country in terms of the amount of money that they jacked in. I didn't get any. I don't know who did, but I hope it was the people that actually needed it. I have a feeling, though, most of it was squandered. Okay, well, Canada, Chile, Germany, South Africa, and Thailand, these breakdown nations carry a lesson. Growth is hard, sustaining it is even harder, so the stars of today are not necessarily the stars of tomorrow. Big problem, right? Let's take those two of Canada and Germany. Germany was the growth story of Europe. Canada was one where, hey, we got lots of resources. Things are so fantastic. Right here. Take Canada first. Widely admired for how it weathered the global financial crisis of 2008, it missed the boat when the world moved on, driven by tech, big tech, instead of commodities. The GDP has been shrinking 0.4% a year since 2020, the worst for any of the developed economies in the top 50. Not the top, come on. It's the worst in the top 50. New investment and job growth is being driven mainly by government. So wherever there is like, there's a little a shining light over there. What is it? Oh, it's government. That's taxpayer dollars. That's a further burden. You look around, what are they doing? Increasing taxes on everybody. That's their only thing. That's all they're doing now. Private sector action is confined largely to the property market, which does little for productivity and prosperity. Many young people can't afford to buy in one of the world's most expensive housing markets. Pressed to name a digital success, Canadian site Shopify, but the online store is the only tech name among the country's 10 largest companies, as shares are trading half of their 2021 peak. Not a good sign. You look at Germany, you look at what's happening with the economic contraction that they had. This is an issue. You've got terrible demographics in a lot of these countries here. You cannot print your way out of a crisis ever, ever. Some suggest it could be used temporarily, but it never is. It never is. And so what do? They just keep doing it. The Federal Reserve right now is pumping in cash still today. What is the purpose of this? They're doing through one means or another. They are trying to actively support the system. Just let it go. Just let it go. Let's have what I called in my first book, the economic detox, and let it go. It will restore itself better than it was before. But who am I? Jerome Powell and my good dear friend, Janet Yellen, more than a friend. Janet Yellen. Oh yes, they are here to help you. Record wave of Americans fled big cities for small ones in 2023. Obviously, you've seen this before, but I got the stats, I got the data, and you could see what has happened. Surge in small towns. More and more people moving out. Because why? Because they love the small towns? Nope. Because they love moving away from their friends and family? No. It's because they cannot afford it anymore. That's it. That's a straight up fact. Nearly 50% of people are considering leaving their jobs in 2024, more than during the Great Resignation. People have had it. People are not making enough money. They're starting to say, should I go live abroad? It's cheaper over there. I could live like a king in that place, or I could live more, I could have more spending money if I live in that place. It's not all fantastic. There's no perfect place, let me tell you. I've searched. But you got to understand, like, if you put a timeline in front of you and you start to say, what does the next 5 years look like? Is it going to be better where I am? Yes or no? And be honest with yourself. 5 years down the road, you got to ask, where is your personal situation? Hey, maybe there's going to be, the Bezos of the world. They're going to be just fine. I'm telling you right now, they're going to be just fine. A rising number of men don't want to work. Okay? A lot of people don't want to work today. We see that. I talked to people about this as well. There's different issues for it. The labor force participation rate is still down significantly. At the same time, you got people that are working a lot. You got people working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs. We know that. However, I think for a lot of individuals, they are disenfranchised. They're saying there's no point in this. And the jobs that they are able to get are not what is basically worth it. They find that it's not worth it. Hard to know for sure, of course. But here, it's sad to see this because there's something very, very enjoyable about hard work. If you work hard all the time, and then maybe you take your week rest periods, or you work 6 days a week, and then you get to rest on the seventh. I find that much more enjoyable than doing nothing. I mean, it doesn't mean that you got to work, the way that society tells you or whatever. I just think doing hard stuff is something that it's rewarding. That means exercising. That means taking the stairs instead of the elevator. All of these things, all of them. Saying thank you when others maybe don't do so, right? Those are the harder steps. People always go for the path of least resistance, and where they end up is not where most people say they want to be. Do you understand what I'm saying? If everybody's going to take the path of least resistance, you have to be the one to say, I'm going to take the harder path. And it's not fun. Look, there was an easier time. I'm telling you right now, if you were 20 years ago, you're 40 years ago, those were easier times for a lot of reasons. In terms of like income to expense ratio. Those times are gone. And we could sit here and we could say, oh my God, this is terrible. If I only voted in the right guy, he would help me out. Those times are gone. So we have to take action as best we can. California fast food chains are now serving sticker shock. You've seen this, articles like this. The prices of things are going crazy. Addiction to debt has left the global economy one shock away from disaster. That's where this leads us, because people are in debt, corporations are in debt, their debt is just piled up and ballooning up. And there have been many people that have said a debt crisis. Look, Ray Dalio, you could read his book about the debt crisis. It always ends badly. We know that to be the case. Usually the suggestion is that it is a deflationary shock to the people, to the those who are directly exposed, and then there's the ripple effect. And that certainly could be the case, but we don't know how that will be responded to, other than what I have seen over and over again is that there's a massive flood of printed paper garbage, and people then, after a period of time, are just worse off. People, they want a deflation, and certainly I would vote for a deflation. I would love a deflation for a period of a year, 2 years, whatever it takes. But what happens here is that during that deflation, it's not like, okay, so what's going to happen? Because I know what happens here. The YouTubers, they tell you, buy my course. It's $500. I'll teach you everything. Look, when the economy goes down the tubes, you just pay attention to me. I'll tell you, right? I mean, that's fine, right? Except for the fact that when you have a debt crisis and when you have a major, not the little things that they make you think it will be, and you're going to be able to pinpoint, okay, when it gets to here, when it gets to there, boom, I'm going to buy, I'm going to sell, and I'm going to be rich, right? It's not how it works, because there's absolute chaos, pandemonium, and no two people are agreeing. So you can't formulate where things are going to be. You don't know what the future looks like because the present is so uncertain. That's what a debt crisis is. That's what we're dealing with today. And people are going to be, blindsided by this. But what can you do? There are absolute principles. Number one, you got to get some level of self-sufficiency and preparedness. Okay? It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter. You have to have some level of self-sufficiency and preparedness. Okay, what does that mean? I have a video about that called Pillars of prosperity. You just type in pillars of prosperity, the money GPS. Very simple. Number one, self-sufficiency. Number two, try to increase your income as best you can. What can you do? Well, there are many things that you can do as an individual. Use the skills that you already have, or you could learn new skills. How do you learn new skills? I mean, there's a million places to do so. One of those places is called Class Central. Class Central is a place that I found that I've shared before, where you can learn all this machine learning, all this, the name changes all the time, AI, artificial intelligence, all that stuff. Actually, courses from the universities. From the universities themselves, they put it on there because they want skilled talent to be joining the workforce and so on. All for you there. Class Central, those are things I teach people on a small Zoom class format. On Fridays, we do the Finance Friday. We look at the intricacies of the markets. We look at the economy. We talk about, investing strategies. That's Friday. And on Sundays, Business Live, we talk about building an online business from scratch. From scratch, how to do it, step one, all the way through, guiding people on a weekly basis. That's what you got to do. You have to take the initiative. You have to take the hard road. It sucks, let me tell you, but I've been on that hard road for a while, and it is not something I don't regret, I assure you. If you appreciate this information, hit that thumbs up button. As always, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.